60% of people with severe mental illness also have a substance abuse problem. The results can be deadly. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to My Healthy Mind. I'm your host, Michael Hunter, and this is my co-host, Elizabeth Atkins. My Healthy Mind is a show that allows us to showcase people who have overcome tragedies in their life, that are triumphing today in spite of tragedies of yesterday. We talk about mental illness, substance use. We talk about anything that people traditionally have thought was off the table or off limits. We talk about it on our show. And we have a great lineup today.
We do. We have Dr. Calvin Trent of the Detroit Recovery Project, who works with people in our city to help them recover and get the resources that they need to get treatment and to live healthy, normal lives.
And he says substance abuse and mental illness are tied together, right?
Yes, and I love that he's exposing that idea because I don't believe most people are aware of the intricate and common connection between mental illness and substance abuse. And it's so fascinating. He said people use substances, alcohol, drugs, to medicate themselves from the trauma or pain that they've experienced.
Yeah, and that's where it begins to become abusive because they're self-medicating instead of getting into treatment, whether it's for the mental illness or when it becomes the substance use disorder too. So he's given us a lot of good information. I believe people are really going to enjoy meeting him today.
Yes. And then we also have Darlene DuBose, who's a peer support specialist here at Team Wellness Center, who shares her powerful recovery story. And I love that she talks about how substance abuse can affect anybody.
Yeah, because her story is atypical because she is not the person who you thought would have gone down that particular road.
No, but by sharing it, she kind of breaks a stereotype that drug use is an inner city problem because it's not.
Absolutely. It can cross any zip code, no matter how affluent or not somebody is. You just got to be very, very conscientious about what you're doing.
Right, and she also was professional, and she had a really good, stable life, but she still succumbed to the temptation of drugs. And then once tragedy strikes in someone's life, they seek comfort from substances, which can just spiral into a terrible space. So we are going to hear both of their stories after this break.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Mental Health Services has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan. Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery. Team Mental Health Services prides itself on going the extra mile for its members.
And it was towards the 6th court date. I finally stood up and said, I can handle this process the rest of the way. And it was all because of the motivation and encouragement I got from Team Mental Health staff.
Team Mental Health Services, because we care and you can.
One more hour burns, so scared of his return that I can't sleep tonight in this hospital life.
We have 3 beautiful children, and everything you do or say to me, they take pictures with their minds, and I want to put a stop to that.
Sometimes I have thoughts of killing you. You know that?
Go ahead. You're doing me a favor.
Alex was the only one that knew the secrets.
Boy, why don't you leave that girl alone for you mess around and get her pregnant?
Why do you have so many boyfriends?
They all treat me nice.
When they ever treated you to anything? Only time they come around here is when they want one thing.
No!
You eat so damn much, why can't you choke on something? You're just a fat, disgusting excuse for a kid, and I ought to smack you!
I should have died instead. They were right.
No, you have. Life is worth living.
I have every type of abuse in there.
Yeah. Verbal, physical, sexual, mental.
You name it, it's in that room.
You see, after years of abuse, you lose yourself.
Miss Vivica. Miss Vivica.
Cause this time, it's the last time. I know that my eyes have seen too much. This nightmare is not fair, and I've had enough. You break me. Did you say you're sorry? You call this love, but this time your lies are not enough. This time.
I know you've been through some hell and high water, but I see a turnaround right now. You will be silent no more.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Today we're talking about mental illness and its relationship to substance abuse. We have a guest with us today, Dr. Calvin Trent from the Detroit Recovery Project. Welcome.
Good morning. Welcome.
Dr. Trent, today we were asking if you could tell us a little bit about your story and the connection between mental illness and substance abuse.
Oh, I'd be glad to, Mike and Liz. Thank you for having me. Mental illness and substance abuse are really ubiquitous in our communities. I mean, it's not something that is confined to any one segment of the community. And, these days, a lot of people are getting over the stigma and are able to talk about their own issues with mental illness. I'm one of those people also, and I'm a person in recovery from a mental illness. As a teenager, I experienced a really horrific trauma in terms of me and a group of friends were together, and one of our friends was killed in front of us. And so that was a trauma that, you just think you can get over, but actually it impacted me very strongly. And as a consequence, I spent about 6 months in Lafayette Clinic. And yet that experience, as horrific as it was, and as lingering as it is, because those memories don't go away, set the stage for the rest of my life in many ways, and the work that I'm doing now. And I now understand that mental illness is not a scary thing. It is, nobody goes through life without trauma. Nobody goes through life without issues that they're trying to resolve, and that recovery is possible. And so in many ways, although it was an experience that I wouldn't want to relive, it's an experience that has helped the growth in my life.
And exactly how, with your work with Detroit Recovery Project, exactly how has your experience enhanced what you do now?
Well, I think that the big part of it is that as I went through that crisis as a 15-year-old and spent time in a mental facility, for 6 months, that I became acquainted with other people that were suffering from mental illness on a basis not as a caregiver but as a peer, as a person also there. And I understand that, a mental illness like a cold is something that happens, and it doesn't define you as a person, and that we all have strengths, even though we have some parts that are weaknesses. And our people with mental illness also have strengths.
And at the Detroit Recovery Project, is the main focus the mental illness aspect, or is it more the substance abuse, and how are they related?
Well, both are issues of our mental illness. Whether the compulsive desire to continue using drugs in the face of negative consequences, or other types of mental illness are issues that are together in a sense, but in our communities and in our families, there's this stigma where we don't really understand mental illness. We think that it's something scary, and that's something we have to get over, and I think in our communities we are doing that. And as a part of Detroit Recovery Project, which is a peer-run organization, and what that means is that people with substance abuse issues that have experienced them in their lives, people with mental illness who have experienced them in their lives, people who have experienced both at the same time, are in recovery and are now leaders. Our CEO, myself, 80% of our staff are people in recovery who are also professional people. So we not only deliver the service, there's a different kind of connection also.
Can you help us all make the connection between mental illness and substance abuse? Because I don't think that's a common understanding.
Right. Well, in many ways, I think that substance abuse is a reaction to trauma in your life. There's a lot of ways that we, negotiate the trauma in our life. I was just talking with my grandson the other day and found that one of his friends had committed suicide. And they were talking about it and said that he, had issues with being gay, and that this became a way for him to cope with that. That's a terrible way to cope with it, but coping with the issues in your life, with the traumas in your life, which are in all communities. We have abusive families, we have, different issues wherever you are. That substance abuse often is one of those ways that people cope with the trauma.
And Detroit Recovery Project, do you guys have a strong outreach to the veterans in our community?
Well, we have a strong outreach to everybody. One of the big things that we do is we reach out to the homeless community. And you would be really, homelessness is another part of the mental illness syndrome. When people have mental illness, many times they may come from affluent communities, but they drift to sometime the lower ranks of our community. Right. And so in the homeless population, we find the veterans, we find people from all classes.
Well, we're going to hear more about that, Dr. Trent, after this commercial break.
One more hour burns, so scared of his return that I can't sleep tonight. In this hospital life,
we have 3 beautiful children, and everything you do or say to me, they take pictures with their minds, and I want to put a stop to that.
Sometimes I have thoughts of killing you. You know that?
Go ahead. You're doing me a favor. Alex was the only one that knew the secrets.
Boy, why don't you leave that girl alone for you mess around and get her pregnant?
Why do you have so many boyfriends?
They all treat me nice.
When they ever treated you to anything? Only time they come around here is when they want one thing.
No! No!
You eat so damn much, why can't you choke on something? You're just a fat, disgusting excuse for a kid, and I ought to smack you!
I should have died instead. They were right.
No, you have. Life is worth living.
I have every type of abuse in there.
Yeah. Verbal, physical, sexual, mental.
You name it, it's in that room.
You see, after years of abuse, you lose yourself.
Miss Vivica. Miss Vivica.
Cause this time, it's the last time. I know that my eyes have seen too much. This nightmare is not fair, and I've had enough. You break me. Did you say you're sorry? You call this love, but this time your lies are not enough. This time
I know you've been through some hell and high water, but I see a turnaround right now. You will be silent no more.
The people here actually care about you and your future and what you become after you graduate high school.
Loyola's mission is to turn out good young men.
Loyola is a place to help us grow.
A smaller setting and more one-on-one.
Give you that one-on-one attention that you don't normally get.
Making sure that the student is taken care of spiritually, educationally, and physically.
I focus more at this school than I did all my other schools.
By the time they get to about the 10th or 11th grade, they're basically bonded like brothers.
If you're looking for a brotherly love or someone to lean on or get in touch with and talk to personally, this school is the perfect place to go.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. We're here with Dr. Calvin Trent of the Detroit Recovery Project and Darlene DuBose, whose powerful recovery story proves that substance abuse can affect anyone. Darlene, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us how you hit rock bottom and rose up and out from there?
Yes, definitely. I graduated college with a finance degree and came back to Detroit and worked at American Natural Resources, and then Tigers won the World Series in 1984. Me and my girlfriends, we all professionals, we hang in with the big wigs, and we got introduced to things, freebasing. And then we thought we liked it, In 1988, my dad passed, and I did not want to deal with his funeral, his loss, and I didn't. I chose anything that was out there that you can get get addicted to. I did. And then a year later, 1989, I got hit by a car. I was a pedestrian, a woman driver. She ran a red light. Now, I don't remember the day of the accident at all because I can only tell you what was in the police report. I was walking across the street. The woman ran the red light. She hit me, broke my femur. I flew up in the air about 4 or 5 feet, landed head first on the front hood of her car, and then collapsed. She told the police that she was moving out of the way to see about me. That's when she moved her car and ran over and crushed my tibia. I tell my members and clients that I was butter gutter because they had to scrape me up off the street and take me to Detroit Receiving. I was in a coma for 6 days, 2 broke legs. I was a Jane Doe for 3. I went to Detroit Receiving. I was in Detroit Receiving, the Detroit Rehabilitation Institute for a year, and then I had to go to a group home, and then I did outpatient for a year out in Novi. Years later, here I am, and I'm thankful to be able to give back.
Yes, and now you're a peer support specialist helping other people with mental illness and addiction recovery through Team Wellness Center, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. We're so happy to hear your powerful story because it proves that substance abuse can affect anybody, professionals, people who went to college, people who seem like they have a stable life.
Yes.
So can you talk about how you that perception was not true with you?
Well, being a professional and being a strong woman, I always thought I was a strong woman. We did things, we tried things, in high school and college. And, we, moved on. And this was just another one of these things that we thought, but no, that particular drug grabs you, and it grabs the mind, cocaine.
And you were a professional, you were academically educated, college, and yet you gave in to an addiction, a substance addiction. Yes. And does that ring common, Dr. Trent?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, substances are everywhere in our community. Every morning, I take at least 5 pills, whether it's for hypertension or whatever, they're not psychoactive, but we live in a drug culture, and the culture is one that drugs can help us solve our problems, alcohol or drugs, and so that becomes the gateway to other problems.
So if I'm hearing you right, because drugs are okay medicinally and prevalent in that realm, it makes it very easily accessible if somebody wants to abuse them or they get addicted or goes too far.
Right, just like with kids now. Prescription drugs. What's in your medicine cabinet? is what's getting a lot of kids addicted to drugs. And so, but the one good thing about this story is, of course, is that many good things, but at least is, you know, that people need to know that there is hope. You know, families see a kid with a drug, the pills are missing, or they find weed in the room. You know, they don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Is it, should I punish or what?
So what are the action steps that people can take as individuals to decide I need help, or as parents to intervene?
Well, anytime that a kid or a person has experienced some kind of trauma particularly, I mean, if it's, you know, I know kids whose dad died, grandfather died, they love their grandfather. And, you know, the thing is, okay, well, oh, he'll be okay. No, you know, seek some therapy, seek some support in her problem. I mean, you know, she had somebody she loved that passed, and that's not always the easy circumstance for people. And so we want them to deal with that in healthy ways, you know, and we need to help them to not just ignore it or cover up or you'll be okay.
And what are healthy ways to deal with a trauma or disappointment or the things you mentioned?
Well, the first is recognizing that it is a problem. Anytime you go through a trauma or a person in your family goes through a trauma, seek some help for it.
So Darlene, what is the first step for someone to stop using drugs and get help?
Get them to at least admit that they need help or that they want to make a change in their life.
Darlene, Dr. Trent, thank you for joining us today. And thank you guys for tuning in to My Healthy Mind.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Mental Health Services has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan. Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery. Team Mental Health Services prides itself on going the extra mile for its members.
And it was towards the 6th court date. I finally stood up and said, I can handle this process the rest of the way. And it was all because of the motivation and encouragement I got from Team Mental Health staff.
Team Mental Health Services, because we care and you can.
One more hour burns, so scared of his return that I can't sleep tonight in this hospital life.
We have 3 beautiful children, and everything you do or say to me, they take pictures with their minds, and I want to put a stop to that.
Sometimes I have thoughts of killing you. You know that?
Go ahead. You're doing me a favor.
Alex was the only one that knew the secrets.
Boy, why don't you leave that girl alone for you mess around and get her pregnant?
Why do you have so many boyfriends?
They all treat me nice.
When they ever treated you to anything? Only time they come around here is when they want one thing.
No! No!
You eat so damn much, why can't you choke on something? You're just a fat, disgusting excuse for a kid, and I ought to smack you!
I should have died instead. They were right.
No, you have. Life is worth living.
I have every type of abuse in there.
Yeah. Verbal, physical, sexual, mental.
You name it, it's in that room.
You see, after years of abuse, you lose yourself.
Miss Vivica. Miss Vivica.
Cause this time, it's the last time. I know that my eyes have seen too much. This nightmare is not fair, and I've had enough. You broke me. Did you say you're sorry? You call this love, but this time your lies are not enough. This time.
I know you've been through some hell and high water, but I see a turnaround right now. You will be silent no more.
people here actually care about you and your future and what you become after you graduate high school.
Loyola's mission is to turn out good young men.
Loyola is a place to help us grow.
A smaller setting and more one-on-one.
Give you that one-on-one attention that you don't normally get.
Making sure that the student is taken care of spiritually, educationally, and physically.
I focus more at this school than I did all my other schools.
By the time they get to about the 10th or 11th grade, they're basically bonded like brothers.
If you're looking for a brotherly love or someone to lean on or get in touch with and talk to personally, this school is the perfect place to go.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Elizabeth,
Yes.
what a great show today again.
Yes, it was powerful.
Dr. Calvin, Trent, and Darlene gave us great information about substance use disorders and how to come out of it. Very, very compelling stories.
Yes, I loved how Darlene talked about how trauma can be a trigger to making people crave the escape of substance abuse to ease their pain, and how Dr. Trent played on that by talking about how people with mental illness self-medicate with drugs and alcohol.
Absolutely. And he mentioned that medication in general is so prevalent in our society that are, legally prescribed, but it gives people the opportunity to get it and overuse it, misuse it, and become addicted like she did, but she did it, like you said, for recreational reasons.
Yes, but I love the way she explained her story because she was professional, she'd been to college, and she was not the stereotype of someone who might use drugs. She illustrates that it can affect anybody.
Absolutely.
And the lure of recreational drug use and trying to call yourself a functional addict, which she said there's no such thing.
Right.
An addict is an addict. And she got help, and such a powerful testimony.
And I think the one thing we never want to lose sight of is that people actually get help, come out of it, and you don't have to be stuck there. You can be in recovery, you can get past it, whatever it is, and even if it's tied to mental illness, like Dr. Trent said, you can still recover from that as well.
Yes, yes, so powerful. We want to hear from you. Please email us at myhealthymind.com and send us a note on Twitter or Facebook. And please join us again next week here on My Healthy Mind. Thank you for joining us.